Shalom, shalom. This is your brother Shataria here at Chicago Branch Great Millstone, prophesizing the return of the Heavenly Father Yahweh and the Son Yahweh Shai. You all ignorantly call him Jesus, but his true and Hebrew name is Yahweh Shai. Coming at you with another lesson. Lord will, it is edifying through the Spirit. But as always, before we get started, we're going to give all praise, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rekah Kadash. Double honors to our apostles and our elders here at Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Honors to the hopeful elect. The so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans are the biblical and true Hebrews of the Bible. Salutation to all the Akim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity, the speckled bird, and all those whose lineage goes back to our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Healthy Barakatah. And to the Akwaf and those of you out there listening and learning, Shalom and Barakatah to you also. I have some history facts for you today, Israel. Seeing how they gave Jake the coldest, and the shortest month to call it Black History Month, all right? But I got some history facts for you, and that word black, I really don't like to use it because I'll go with the word white first. You see that word white? It goes into first of all, it's a fabricated or fictional concept. That's what the word white is, okay, Israel? It is a man-made word, a fabricated or fictional concept, and that word concept that goes into an abstract idea, a general notion, a plan or intention. Okay, so that word white, it was created, came about in 1681 in the state of Virginia. All right, and from that point on, the late 1600s, all the way to the 1700s, even right now, this present day, that white supremacy thing spread like wildfire, and Trump and DJ Trump, Nero Trump, then poured gasoline on it and just ignited it. Is going out of control right now, okay? And that's caused that Revelation 12:12. He has but a short time and he's running out, all right? He's coming down with that great wrath. And that's another lesson in itself. But I have history facts. Chicago, my hometown, past and present. And we're going to take a look at the engineered segregation and wealth that was created out of poverty, okay? That's the perfect words for it, all right? It's a video I'm going to play, and the video is about 9 minutes long. We're not going to draw it out. We're going to let the video play, comment on it a bit, and jump right into the precepts, all right? But before we do anything, we're going to read the copyright disclaimer because I had them take down 2 channels, okay? The first channel I had, it didn't have nothing but 182 viewers on it, and this channel here, Shataria Yasharala, I thought I had it back up where I could have two channels. Abaratazat, Lord will, I had a young lady, she's pretty computer savvy. She'll be able to bring that one back up. And it has a few more viewers, like 160 viewers I have on it, along with the 100 I have. But my small, flock, I do try to edify them to the best of my ability, all through the spirit of Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. But the title of this video is pretty much this lesson here, Chicago, past and present. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for the purpose such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. So without any further ado, we'll let the video play, jump right in, okay, and elaborate on it a bit, bring the precepts out, and this shouldn't take too long.
Chicago, a global titan. The architectural marvel of the American Midwest, a city of 2.7 million people defined by its ambition, its resilience, and its iconic skyline piercing the clouds. From the manicured parks of the North Side to the glittering skyscrapers of the Loop, this is the Chicago the world knows. A city of wealth, culture, and relentless energy. A place where fortunes are made where innovation thrives, and where the American dream still seems within reach. But this is also Chicago. Just a few miles south, this is not a rural field. This is a city neighborhood, or what is left of it. Each patch of green is not a park, it is a ghost. The ghost of a home, a family, a life that is no longer here. In 1960, this neighborhood, Englewood, was a dense, working-class community of nearly 100,000 people. Today, fewer than 25,000 remain. A staggering 75% of its population has vanished. This is not just decline, this is an exodus, and it is happening all across the city's south and west sides.
Best way to get rid of yellow, crumbling toenails, Epsom salt foot soaks.
Wow.
Nope. Apple cider vinegar? Nope. Tea tree?
It's happening all across the city's south and west sides. So how is this possible? How can one of America's greatest cities be a story of two completely different worlds? One that is growing and thriving, and another that is literally disappearing off the map? This is not a simple story of urban decay. This is a story of geography, of industry, of race, and of money. A story of how a city can be engineered to create prosperity in one area and abandonment in another. Today we are asking, why is nobody living in southern Chicago? To understand Chicago's fractured present, we must look to its geography. Unlike coastal cities hemmed in by mountains, Chicago was born on a vast, flat, and swampy plain. This landscape offered no natural barriers to expansion, encouraging endless sprawl. The city's most critical asset was its strategic choke point at the southern tip of Lake Michigan, the one spot where the Great Lakes water system nearly touched the Mississippi River basin. Whoever controlled this portage controlled the flow of goods for an entire continent. In 1833, Chicago was little more than a muddy trading post of 350 souls huddled around Fort Dearborn. Its destiny was forged in steel and water in 1848, the year two monumental projects came to life. The Illinois and Michigan Canal finally carved a man-made link between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi, while the city's first railroad, the Galena and Chicago Union, laid the tracks for a new era of commerce. Suddenly, Chicago was the undisputed gateway to the American West. Lumber from Wisconsin, grain from the Great Plains, and cattle from Texas all flowed through the city. By 1865, the colossal Union stockyards opened on the south side, a city within a city that would make Chicago the hog butcher for the world. To feed this industrial machine, waves of immigrants from Germany, Ireland, Poland, and Italy poured in, and the city's population exploded. Then, in October 1871, the Great Chicago Fire consumed 17,500 buildings, and it left a third of the population homeless. But from these ashes rose a modern metropolis. The Great Rebuilding was a chance to start from a blank slate. Architects flocked to Chicago, pioneering the skyscraper and giving birth to the Chicago School of Architecture. The fire had cleared the way for a bigger, bolder Chicago. By 1900, it was the fifth largest city on Earth. As the 20th century dawned, the Great Migration redefined the city. Millions of African Americans moved from the rural South to the industrial North, with hundreds of thousands coming to Chicago for jobs in the steel mills and meatpacking plants of the South Side. They found work, but not welcome. Through restrictive covenants, redlining, and violence, Chicago's black population was contained within a narrow, overcrowded strip of neighborhoods on the South Side known as the Black Belt. This engineered segregation laid the foundation for the divisions that haunt the city today. By 1950, Chicago reached its zenith with a peak population of 3.6 million people. It was a dense, muscular, industrial powerhouse. Neighborhoods like Englewood were packed with families, their streets lined with shops, churches, and schools. The South Side was the economic engine of the city, where tens of thousands of workers clocked in every day to factories and mills that never seemed to stop. But even at its height, the seeds of its unraveling were being sown. The post-war boom, the rise of the automobile, and the creation of the interstate highway system fueled a new American dream, a house in the suburbs. White middle-class families began leaving the dense city in droves. Phenomenon known as white flight, drawn by the promise of green lawns and new schools. Simultaneously, the very industries that had built the South Side began to rust and crumble. The Union Stockyards, once the beating heart of the city's economy, fell silent in 1971. The colossal steel mills on the far South Side, which had employed tens of thousands, shut their gates in the 1980s. Deindustrialization was not a slow decline. It was a catastrophic economic hurricane that wiped out the job base of entire communities. When the factories closed, the workers had no choice but to leave. City planning often made things worse. Urban renewal projects and the construction of massive expressways like the Dan Ryan were rammed through the heart of established black neighborhoods, destroying homes and creating concrete canyons that isolated communities. Entire blocks were bulldozed to make way for highways that allowed suburban commuters to bypass the very neighborhoods they had destroyed. The city's solution to the housing crisis was to build colossal public housing projects like the Robert Taylor homes. These poorly designed high-rises became vertical ghettos, concentrating poverty on an unprecedented scale. What was meant to be a solution became a symbol of abandonment. Today, the result is a city starkly split in TWU. The North Side is a picture of prosperity. Neighborhoods like Lincoln Park and Lakeview are dense, wealthy, and overwhelmingly white, with vibrant commercial streets and pristine parks. The downtown loop and the gentrified West Loop are experiencing a construction boom, with cranes dotting the skyline and luxury condos rising where warehouses once stood.
Drinking warm water before bed improves eyesight almost overnight. Apparently, thousands of people are already doing.
And luxury condos rising where warehouses once stood. Here, the population is stable or growing. Investment flows in, new businesses open, and the future looks bright. But travel a few miles south, and you enter a different reality. In Englewood, West Englewood, and Roseland, the story is one of disinvestment. It is a landscape of absence, seen in the thousands of vacant lots and boarded-up storefronts. Where there were once homes, there is now grass. Where there were once thriving commercial corridors, there are now empty shells. The 75% population collapse in Englewood is the most extreme example, but not unique. These communities bore the full brunt of deindustrialization, white flight, and systemic neglect, and were never allowed to recover. The loss of jobs and people created a vicious cycle of decline, where businesses, banks, and city services followed the residents out the door. Schools closed. Even grocery stores disappeared, creating food deserts in neighborhoods that once had everything. So why does nobody live in southern Chicago? For 50 years, every major force, economic, political, and social, has conspired to push them out. The story of southern Chicago is a tragic interplay of geography that enabled sprawl, a history of industrial boom and bust, and a legacy of racial segregation that created a disposable part of the city. The flat terrain that made Chicago easy to build also made it easy to abandon, as residents could simply move west into endless suburbs. The industries that once anchored communities to place disappeared, taking with them not just jobs, but identity and purpose. And the segregation that confined black residents to specific neighborhoods meant that when those neighborhoods were targeted for disinvestment, an entire population was left behind. The result is a tale of two Chicagos, existing side by side but worlds apart. A thriving global hub and a collection of forgotten neighborhoods fading away.
And Chicago. There you have it, Israel. Like he said, the tale of two cities, okay? We're going to talk about this for a minute and jump into the precepts. But that white flight era, I can remember that, okay, because I was around then, all right. And actually, if you take a look at it, you see how they this is what you call, again, engineered segregation, or to be point blank direct, we have wealth created through poverty, okay? What they did was destroy the Black Belt of Chicago, okay, and gentrify or beautify the rest of the city. Like you go up north, Lincoln Park, okay, Wicker Park, all right, Rogers Park, okay, and they tore down and everything left the south side, okay. You see all the steel mills, okay, they left, okay, they folded up and left. All the businesses pretty much didn't leave, because back then the Black Belt of Chicago, what happened, the hopes of freedom energized the migration, where our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers and grandmothers migrated from the South, Mississippi, South Carolina, okay, Memphis, etc., and moved to Chicago, moved north, all right? And when we got here, you met restrictive contracts, okay, that barred new areas, okay? What I mean by that, banks redlined the black communities, and that redlining, that caused violence, you know. Violence, it erupted in the Black Belt. You know, the borders were overcrowded. Blacks had a very stressful and hard day-to-day lifestyle, and that made day-to-day living just stressful and hard. You see, Chicago's Black Belt, just like every other city throughout Babylon, aka America, we held our own, and then some. Okay, if you look at Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they just came up with the same lie that they always come up with, how a black man supposedly had messed with a white woman to destroy the wealth. Just tore Black Wall Street down. They did that. I did a lesson on townships and cities in America that were destroyed, totaled, or just some of them flooded out, like Lake Lanier in Georgia, okay, about 50 miles outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Another wealthy township, Rosewood, Florida, okay, independently, you know, pretty much Hebrew owned and operated. So again, Jake held his own, okay, and given a level playing field, we can hold our own. You know, we're the former of all things, like it says in Jeremiah. But this is what you have, again, engineered segregation and wealth created through poverty, okay? I just did a lesson on this here maybe a week or two ago about the Fair Housing Act, all right? Where the blacks were technically able to apply for federal housing following the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968, Title 8 of the Civil Rights of 1968. And that was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson on April 1968. This landmark legislation made it legal to refuse to sell, rent, or negotiate for housing, or to deny mortgage loans based on race, color, religion, national origin, etc. All right. So again, to be point blank, this is wealth created through poverty, okay? And what you just saw was the tale of two cities, okay? We'll get into the precepts, but right here, the key details regarding the timeline and the content, the initial exclusion from the 1930s all the way up until the 1960s, federal housing policies, particularly those of the Federal Housing Administration, you know, FHA, all right? often explicitly excluded Black Americans from subsidized low entrance mortgages, all right, for new suburban housing, while simultaneously supporting segregated, often low quality public housing in the inner cities, all right. 1962 executive order, President John F. Kennedy issued an executive order of 11063 in 1962, which prohibited discrimination in housing built with federal subsidies, okay? However, it was criticized for only applying to future, not existing federal assisted housing, okay? So even though he signed it into law, it didn't really go into effect. I want to say maybe the late 70s, because my mom and dad, they have a home in Beverly, okay, and they bought that home in we moved out here in 77. My grandfather had a building that he bought, 9046 Bishop. It's since been sold by my family, you know, my aunties or whoever. And that building was bought in 1970, I believe, or 71, I'm not sure. But even though he signed this in 62, it really didn't go into play until the 70s, almost 10, 15 years later, okay? So Chicago's Black Belt was just like all the other cities throughout America, you know, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, okay, Rosewood, Florida, all right, Lake Lanier, okay, you know, where they got flooded out, okay. It was a wealthy township, well-to-do, independently owned and operated through Hebrew, okay. Just like the Black Belt, you see, they divided the Black Belt, okay, and this was systematically designed, okay. Cut through, built that Dan Ryan right through the Black Belt, destroying houses, then built big barriers, dividing the rest of the Black Belt. So this is wealth created out of poverty, like I said, Israel. And that's what it was, you know, and that's what it is this present day, all right? Because given a level playing field, Jake can hold his own and then some, okay? And you had Black communities, okay? The Black Belt didn't need anything. We had basically grocery stores were Hebrew owned and operated, restaurants, okay, clothing stores, shoe stores, gas stations, and the nightlife was legendary, okay, here in Chicago, okay? You had lounges, you had bars where the so-called quote unquote hip Edomites, hip white folk, okay, used to come and hang out. Theaters like the Regal Theater, the Apollo up in Harlem, but the Regal was legendary, okay, back then. And it was on 47th and South Park, all right? That's known today as 47th and King Drive. Present day, it's located on 79th and Stony Island, all right? But this is what they do, and it really was no laws made or nothing like that. What they did use was credit scores to deny and just flat out systemic racism. Let's get the precepts and get ready to close the lesson now. Let's get Ezekiel, and we want Ezekiel 35:5. And it says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Okay? You see, slavery was over, okay? And they still refused to let us go. All right? What they did was had us sharecropping, all right? Where we basically still were in slavery, working master's land and getting pennies for it, and that caused the great migration, okay? In hopes of freedom, it energized the migration north, all right? And when our grandfathers, grandmothers, great-grandfathers got here, this is what they were met with, okay? Engineered segregation. wealth that was created out of poverty. Again, neighborhoods like Wicker Park, Lincoln Park, Rogers Park, okay? And the Black Belt, okay, we were pretty much independently owned and operated. So what they did was drive that wedge between it with that Dan Ryan, and they started building barriers, you know, overpasses and viaducts to separate the city, separate the Black Belt, okay? And this is what we're looking at. This is what we have right now, firsthand, real time. Again, Ezekiel 35:5, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. And again, slavery had ended, and they still refused to let us go and held us fast, and we're still held captive this present day. All right? Okay, Israel? And like I said, it really wasn't any laws. It was just straight out racism and hatred. And like I said, that word white, it's a fabricated. I said that at the top of the lesson. I broke that down. And the word black, these words were created again to bring about racism, bring about hatred. And black is used in a very negative way, okay, to stereotype someone or something. Black ball, blacklist, black book, all right? When in fact, we're not black at all. We're swarthy colored people, all right? And we're not African American at all, okay? We're not Hamites, we're Shemites. This is another lesson in itself, but just talking, you know, let's go here. Let's go here, okay? Like I said, the only thing they really used to do this here as far as laws was, you know, discriminated against the credit scores. And like I said, they, you know, didn't allow black families, okay, subsidize low interest mortgages back then, okay? Where they, in the white flight, you saw all the white, known as the white flight, they moved to the suburbs and got low interest mortgage loans, loans that were not available or denied to the so-called black homeowners, okay? All the businesses abandoned them, okay? The steel mills, all right? The factories, everything left once Esau left, okay? It migrated along with the white flight. And then, despite us being able to hold our own, just unifying our own money, they still came through and destroyed the Black Belt, okay? So again, this Ezekiel 35:5 is perfect, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword, and that was his gift. It tells you that in Genesis 27th chapter, okay? In the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. And slavery was over, okay? But they held us fast, did not let us go. And they came up with this sharecropping thing where we pretty much worked their land, Esau's land, for pennies, okay? Get nothing. And that energized the migration north, okay? Let's go here real quick. Let's grab this Wisdom of Solomon. We need Wisdom of Solomon. There we go. Let's get it. Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 10. Okay, Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 10. All right, and it says, let us oppress the poor righteous man. And when you hear that word poor, Israel, that's going into it, you know, poor, that's Israel, okay? When you hear that word poor, that's Israel, okay? That's the so-called blacks, all right, they talking about. That's Israel, all right? Let us oppress the poor righteous man. Let us not spare the widow, nor reference the ancient gray hairs of the aged, okay? So they didn't care, rich or poor, okay? We didn't have no wealth, but young or old, I should say, Salakia. All right, young or old, married or widowed or whatever the case may be, or no, that's what they do, all right? Let us oppress the poor righteous man. Let us not spare the widow, nor reference the ancient gray hairs of the age. Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing rough. Okay? All right, and this is beautiful. I can continue on this here, but for time's sake, I'll just stop it at Wisdom of Solomon 2:11. Beautiful passage right here. Let's line back off it with Proverbs 22, okay? Let's get Proverbs 22. Let's get Proverbs 22 and 16, all right? And Proverbs 22 and 16 says, he that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches. And what did I tell you at the top of the lesson, Israel? This is wealth, okay, orchestrated through poverty, okay? Wealth gotten through poverty, okay? He that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches. He that giveth the rich shall surely come to want. He that giveth to the rich shall surely come to want, okay? He that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches, and he that giveth to the rich shall surely come to want. And this is what they did. And this is what they're still doing this present day. Real time, firsthand, okay? Oppressing the poor, all right? And like I said, it was just flat out racist discrimination, engineered segregation, okay? Wealth created through poverty, all right? That's what they did, and that's what they're still doing, okay? And like I said, you know, these words that I'm talking about, black and white, I did a lesson on that as well, where Genesis 25:24 through 26 tells you that Esau is not white, he's a red man, okay? So these words were brought about to create a man-made concept, a fictional concept, to devise racism, to bring about hatred, okay? All right, and it tells you that Daniel, that's what I'm going to close the lesson with, Israel, that Daniel, that's what we're going to close the lesson with. That's beautiful, that's perfect. Daniel 8:25, we'll close with that. But like I said, again, it really was no laws put into play. This was just straight racism. They did use the credit scores to stop us from getting, you know. So we'll go here real quick. Psalms. Let's get Psalms 94 and 20. And it says, 94 and 20 in the book of Psalms, shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law. Okay, so even though they didn't make a bunch of laws to do this, this was straight out systematic racism. Okay, engineered segregation and wealth created through poverty, okay, where they gentrified and beautified sections of the city like the north side, the far east side. There's Hyde Park going over there, you know, Lake Park, where the wealthy Edomites are over there, and they tore down the black belt, destroyed the black, you know, the black. Like I say, everything was Hebrew owned and operated. We had our own grocery stores, own restaurants, own clothing stores, own shoe stores, own gas stations. And again, the nightlife was legendary in Chicago. Lounges like the Club de Lisa, just to name a few. Bars, the theaters, the Regal Theater. Back then, it was located on 47th and South Park. That was the heart of the Black Belt then. And South Park is known today as King Drive. Present day, the Regal Theater sits on 79th and Stony Island, okay? All right, so again, Psalms 94 and 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? And like I said, they didn't write a whole bunch of laws or anything like that to discriminate. They just simply used credit scores and flat flat out racism, okay? Just flat out said they couldn't come, okay? When I used that Fair Housing Act of 1968, I pretty much used that James 2 and 2, respective persons, all right? But let's get ready to close the lesson, and we're going to close it. We're going to use this Daniel, all right? Let's grab Daniel, okay? And we'll get ready to close it with him. And let's get Daniel. And let's get Daniel 8 and 25. And it says, and through his policy, also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. Let's look up the definition of policy. Okay, Israel, let's get that definition. Okay. Let's get that definition. Definition of policy. Okay, it says a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government, party, business, or individual. Okay, and that's what they did. Okay, they took a course of action, all right, to block out the black belt, to destroy the black belt. Okay, again, the definition of policy, a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government, a party, a business, or a individual. All right, now let's go right back in there. Okay, and get that Daniel. Let's go back in there and grab that Daniel 8 and 25. So you can get the full measure. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. Let's get the definition of craft now, all right? Well, you can get an understanding of what this Edomite has done. Definition of craft. It's a few of them, but I got the one I need. An activity involving skill in making things by hand. Number 2, bingo. Skill used in deceiving others, okay? All right, you see what that says? Skill used in deceiving others, okay? And if you go to Genesis 3rd chapter, I think it's at the top where it talks about the beast was the most subtle of the field. And that word subtle, it goes into deceiving, not deception, okay? And that's what he did through his deception, okay? Daniel 8 and 25, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And that's perfect. And that's wealth created through poverty. All right, Israel? And he shall magnify himself in his heart. And the Hebrew word for heart is lab. That means your mind. And he magnifies himself in his mind daily. Okay? Daily, on a daily basis, okay? And by peace shall destroy many. I'll give you an example of that. How many peace treaties did he make with Gad, all right? Our brother in Gad, the Native Americans, okay? 300, 400, and he made 400 peace treaties with Gad, and how many of them did he keep? None. 0 goose egg, all right, Israel? He didn't keep any of them. 2 Timothy 3rd chapter, okay, tells you they're natural truce breakers, among other things, okay? All right? So this is this man has had a perpetual hatred from us, okay, ever since we got the blessing. A blessing that how the Edomites teach, these blonde-haired, blue-eyed devils, this Renaissance Christianity teaches that it was stolen, but through biblical scripture, it says it says different, okay? It was given away. He despised his birthright, okay? What it talks about in Hebrews, all right? But again, Daniel 8 and 25, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many, okay? And that's what they did. I just gave you Gad as an example. Over 400 treaties that were made, and he kept not near one of them. Not only did he keep them, but he's a very wicked man, okay? came to them in friendship, wanting to trade, okay, goods and services, all right, where they gave them goods, okay, corn, food, etc. They gave them clothing infested with smallpox, gave them horses infested with smallpox, okay? This is the nature of this man. Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. They cover the faces of the judges thereof, if not, wherein who is he? And we all know the chief judge is our Savior, Yahweh Shai. Okay, they covered his face with that blonde-haired, blue-eyed devil you see hanging up on all these high places, which are churches, okay? And Revelation tell you how they crossed out his name, all right? His name is not Jesus. You ignorantly call him that, as I said at the top of all my lessons, but his true and Hebrew name is Yahweh Shai, okay? That's how they crossed out our Lord and Savior, okay? But that's pretty much all I have in this lesson. History, facts, Chicago, past and present. Lord will, the lesson is edifying through the Spirit. In closing, I like to say a Bob Bowl.